Cleveland, right?
Yeah.
That's insane. So, I mean, I know that Cleveland's considered like the birthplace of rock and roll. Do you
Yeah.
think like that's like has that been, especially like listening to your music and hearing that rock and roll influence, has that always been a part of your life?
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I mean, like everybody goes to like the Rock Hall here and like it's like a I guess you could say like a tourist attraction and it's really fun. My producer who does all of my stuff is primarily, I want to say, rock based. He's great at everything. He's very good at rock based and I think it has a lot to do with obviously his experience and being from here as well. So it's super cool to kind of see it kind of weave itself in.
It like melds together, right? Do you think you've always
Yeah.
wanted to be this kind of rock artist?
Um, it's interesting. I didn't really know what my sound was going to look like, and I still kind of don't. I'm still kind of experimenting. I knew that I wanted to be in that like kind of pop umbrella, but I love like punk music. I love Paramore. I love Machine Gun Kelly. I love that Olivia Rodrigo. So I was like, you know what? We'll start there, I guess. So
Yeah. And I mean, like, you can see that evolution as well because I Hate Strangers was your first musical release, right?
yes, yes.
Like, around then, what made you decide that that was a sound that you wanted to put out into the universe first?
Um, so I wrote that song. I'm 19 now. I wrote that song when I was 17, and I wrote it at home. So I recorded "I Hate Strangers" in Tampa, Florida, when I was at school there at the time, and I wrote it at home, and it was the first more like punk-esque song that I wrote. And I remember writing it, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is it! Like this is what I want to do." And it was actually supposed to be a little more punk than what it is released. The references that we had for it were a little heavier in like your electric guitar and stuff like that, but it was mellowed down and I liked it and a lot of people like it, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and you can kind of, it's really cool because you can see that musical evolution that you're going through as you're finding your sound as well. Because you're not afraid to experiment with all the different sounds. Like Lose Myself, when I heard that, I was like, whoa, this is completely different than anything you've ever really, like, it's an incredible song, but it has that different feeling. So as you kind of go through it, and you're like, all right, let me figure out the kind of stuff that I want to sound like. You are also an incredibly gifted visual artist. Like the concept of your songs and especially like this EP, like you built it up for a long time. And with every single release, it kind of has this world, you know? How do you kind of come up with that cohesive vision, not only for the release, but for the EP in general?
It's a lot. It's a lot of time and it's a lot of playing off of little ideas and bouncing off of things. The whole like just for show, like the TV vision of it, it came to me when I was actually recording, I think it was Between the Lines. The cover for that is actually like a play on like a digital camera. And a lot of the time, me and like my cousin who runs all of my creative direction will go through like as silly as it sounds, we'll go through like Pinterest and we'll look at certain things. And I saw this pin of like stacked TVs and I was like, oh, I really like that, but I want to do it for a later project. So things will just come to me in like little increments and I'll try to weave them together as much as I think they can make sense at the
Yeah.
time.
And I think it's really cool too because it's the whole like you're trapped in the TV. And I feel like whenever you create stuff, I don't know if it's the same for you, but a lot of musicians are like, I'm putting it out into the world. It's up for the listener to interpret it in any way that they feel. Is that kind
Sure.
of what you were thinking with the concept as well? Like, I'm putting this out here, or was there something that you wanted us to go into thinking and believing as we listen through the EP?
I think kind of both. I think the very cool thing with music is no matter what message anybody puts forward with it, everybody is always having the opportunity to take it in its own route. The in the TV kind of metaphor, I guess you could say, was the Just for Show and the title track of Just for Show. It talks about like, you know, do you really like me as a person or do you like me because of a status? Do you like me because it's, you know, something superficial or something that's, you know, just entertaining in the moment? And I think that, you know, a lot of pop culture and a lot of celebrities go through this kind of phase in this phenomena of, you know, I'm being in the spotlight all the time and there's a lot of artists that talk about it and I was just like, yeah, I think this could be cool. And you know, so the TV is kind of a rendition of that, but it's obviously it's open for interpretation.
Yeah, yeah. I
But
think it's really interesting as well because it's like you're so young in your career, and the fact that like you're bringing in those references, that's really true to really anybody that's in the industry is so special and it's so unique. Do you think
yeah,
whenever you're creating stuff like this, you think of the longevity and like the impact that it can have further?
for sure. I definitely see like a lot of songs and a lot of musical works like really hit a peak like way past its time of release. I know like a lot of TikTok sounds and a lot of songs that, blow up from there were made in 2016, 2015, and it impacts people because, they grew with the song or people grew older with the message or something like that. And I think that's also something that's really cool about music is it never really goes away. It just kind of moves with time and evolves with everybody else. So yeah, I definitely think that it will evolve how it needs to, but I'm very excited to see what that looks like in
Yeah,
the
and
same.
it's something that's really out of your control at that point. It's like the once the music's out there, it's out there, and it depends on the listeners how they want to use that essentially. Do you have
Yeah,
any, I know we talked a little bit about it like yesterday about like our like I mean we bonded over Taylor Swift and I'm like, do you have any other artists that like you not just like musicians but in general the people whose career that you look up to and you find inspiration from?
another artist that I looked up to is Machine Gun Kelly. He grew up about 15 minutes from me.
Oh
So
wow.
it's super cool. Yeah, it's super cool to kind of, hear and like see his story and see where he went and be like, oh, I literally live by here and I live by this and it how he evolved and how he worked through a lot of stuff. It's super cool being able to be like, oh, I'm, in the same vicinity.
You're in here.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
like you can soak up that creativity as well. And I feel like, especially like being in Cleveland, like there's so much history there that I feel like it's hard not to have that soak in, especially whenever you work with different producers or musicians. It's like hard not to be influenced by that. What is that looking
Yeah.
like though, whenever you step into the studio and you're like, all right, I want to write this EP. It's kind of angry, it's kind of sad. I have all of these thoughts. Like, what does that look like from the moment that you conceive the idea to writing it to producing it and then figuring out whether or not you want it on the EP?
Yeah. So writing this EP was super cool, actually. The EP we ended up recording start to finish in 3 weeks, which is
Oh,
super
wow.
quick. In
Yeah.
yeah, EPs will typically take, a couple months. People have teams, people have, especially bigger artists, they bounce back and forth. Um, I don't have that sense yet, but this EP was originally supposed to come out in April. And for that reason, I was like, I need this, I want this done in 3 weeks. I think we can do it. So Sober was written in October of 2022. And that was a song that I was not going to put. I thought that song was going to be a single. I didn't do anything with it. I didn't think it was going to be on the EP, but it was. It was a last minute decision. Thought of You was written in 30 minutes and recorded within an hour,
Mhm.
which is nuts, which is crazy. We typically take, 2 to 4 hours on vocal production. So to do it in an hour was crazy. Just for Show was, I think, really interesting to write because I don't write those kinds of songs. But Corpse Ride was definitely the most fun to write because it's so outside of everything. And yeah, the writing process was kind of all over the place, but going into the studio, I texted my producer, my lovely producer Ben, and I was like, okay, what dates do you have available? What times? I'm gonna need probably like 100 sessions. Like, let's do it. And we blocked out a big chunk of time, and it was just in there every day for hours, just working away, which is so fun to kind of experiment and play with things. So
So going into it,
thank you.
did you know that Just for Show was going to be like the titular track? Like that's going to be the name of the EP. It's going to be right smack dab in the center, or was it kind of like you were still trying to figure out what the sound was?
Just for Show was an interesting track because I didn't want to do it. I
Mm.
it was actually pushed by my mom. My mom is a big fan of me singing ballads. I love singing ballads. who doesn't like singing ballads in like the car. But writing them and recording them, it felt, at least the idea of it felt very not me, just because switching from punk to that is kind of an interesting change. Um, but listening to it back, like I was like, oh, this is a good song. And I played it for my cousins and my creative directors, and um, they're like, yeah, this is really good. And I was really interested to see how people were going to perceive that, because it's not something they normally hear from me. But people love it. I find it very interesting, but people really
Yeah.
do like it.
And I feel like it's kind of needed as well because whenever you have an EP or like a body of work that it's like it's at this level the entire time, it's like, okay, like give me something I can cry to. Give me something that like,
Right.
and so
Right.
it's kind of like what you said about Corpse Bride too. And I really want to talk about Corpse Bride because I think it's so interesting.
Sure.
But it goes
Sure.
from the very beginning, it's like, okay, it sets the tone for what's gonna happen. And I think it kind of starts this story that ends, it takes you through this journey, it ends with Corpse Bride. Did you kind of mean for that to happen? Like as you were writing this stuff, I want to tell this cohesive story that kind of gets tied up in a little bow at the end, or was it like did it just kind of come out that way?
Um, Kind of both. Every time that I write something, no matter like if it's in a succession of works or it's one single, I want it to be a story through and through. I want a listener to be able to close their eyes and put themselves into that situation. And Corpse Bride was an interesting one. Corpse Bride was also not supposed to be made. I didn't think that this song was going to see the light of day, honestly, just because of how weird it is, honestly.
In the
But
best
Corpse
way
Bride was,
possible.
yeah, thank you. Corpse Bride was written as I was actually watching the movie. I was making like my Halloween costume like in my dorm room, and I was watching the movie, and I watched it as a kid, but I never really remembered how it ended. And I was like, oh, I kind of don't like this ending, right? So the ending of Corpse Bride is, the dead bride essentially, like throws in the towel and is like, well, if you guys are happy, then like I'll leave you alone. And I was like, that's not that fun. So I was like, well, I could probably rewrite that. And Corpse Bride got crazy. Corpse Bride was definitely the most fun to record, but it was not originally supposed to sound like that. It was supposed to be on like acoustic guitar, but Corpse Bride was what we started with because I knew that creatively it was going to take the longest, and it took session after session after session of with my other producer Tyler, who typically does my guitars, and we were going back and forth with just guitar chords for about a week of just, there were so many demos and variations of how this was going. And then, we brought Ben in, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And Ben has a very like weird like spidey sense of music. He's wickedly talented, and so he'll pick up on anything that you kind of throw him. And he was like, well, what if we did this, what if we did this? And I pulled up a bunch of references, and I pulled up a bunch of different pieces, and as it came together, I was like, oh, this is actually really cool. So it was fun making something alternative, and I probably will do it again because I had so much fun
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah, and it's so unique and it just stands out so much and so well. I know we're kind of jumping around like with the
Oh my
different
god, yeah.
the different tracks
Oh
and stuff,
hey, yeah.
but I did want to talk about Revenge. Revenge is super heart pumping, mad at the world, but also mad at myself song, and the instrumentals are insane. Do you work with a live band in the studio or how does that kind of work?
So kind of. So all of the guitar for my songs is done by my producer Tyler. So me and Tyler will come in and we'll do guitar sessions. Typically first, that's what we lay down first track wise is guitars because I think they're easier to follow melodically. And then my producer Ben played drums in a bunch of bands over the years. So he's again wickedly talented with drums as well. So when we go through and we're mixing, he'll typically add like computer automated drums, like he'll do it through like his software. And then when we go to like put the final piece together, he'll re-record that live. And same goes for piano and any synths and any stuff like that. They kind of, it's just the two of them. They kind of work,
Yeah.
which is crazy, but yeah.
That's insane. Yeah, I always wondered how that would look like, especially because it's so intense. Like I can't imagine like standing there trying to sing and then having all of this stuff going on. And it's
Yeah.
like it's crazy because it's just it flows together so well and it makes sense that the people that are working with you throughout the whole entire thing because sometimes you get bits and fragments of different music producers coming in for one song and then it's kind of switching up. So sometimes it's not as cohesive, but then having the same people and then having that kind of faith and trust in being like, hey, I am here. This is what I want. We're trusting each other's creative vision and then creating something good. But is there a moment that you have as an artist where you feel, okay, this is what I'm feeling at the moment. Let's see how far I can take this. And is that ever a scary experience or is it just beautiful?
Yeah, it's definitely scary. It's definitely, a risk. There's a lot of songs that didn't make this EP. There was
Mhm.
about, if I had to ballpark, I'd probably say there was about 15 to 20 songs that were in consideration for this EP.
Mm,
A lot of them either I didn't choose to put on because I felt they were too left field, or I felt that they didn't fit the story, or I felt, that creatively it might get a little dicey. There's a lot of
mhm.
acoustic songs that I actually write that I have in my like vault, I guess you could say, that I haven't done anything with. So I might, but that'll be scary too to see how people perceive those as well. So
Yeah. Acoustic version of this EP coming out soon. Out of all of the songs that you've been writing, whether they've been released or not, which one challenged you the most?
ooh, that's a great question. The one that challenged me the most is probably Thought of You, which was Thought of You is the first track that it was the last song written and the last song recorded. And it was because I couldn't figure out a sixth track. I was bouncing and bouncing and bouncing tracks back and forth from, I opened vault tracks from 2020. I opened tracks from 2021. I went back, I wrote new things, and I was like, I don't like any of this, and nothing seemed to fit. And I, landed on a couple different references. I was like, okay, we can do something like this. And, I wrote Thought of You. It typically doesn't take me no longer than a, a day. Longest to write a song, shortest 20 minutes.
Mhm.
And
Oh
Thought
wow. I mean, okay, that's talent right there.
Thank you. Thank you. But thought of you took me days. It took me like over a week. I couldn't get anything out. I don't know why, and it was really difficult. And when we were picking the single, I ended up sending the songs out to my management, and I was like, "Hey, which ones do you like for a single?" And he picked Thought of You, so I was like, I knew it. I had a deep feeling. But Thought of You also wasn't supposed to sound like that. Thought of You was supposed to sound different as well, and it was kind of time crunch, kind of a weird thing. But yeah, Thought of You was difficult. Yeah.
That's so interesting that it became the song that was the hardest to write to kind of like come together and then that becomes the single. Because
Yeah.
that's also like paving the way for what you like people are going to expect for the EP. Did
Yeah.
you think that that was like a valid reason too for making it track number one? Like, is that the reason too that you made it the first track?
Both there was, there's definitely some like thinking as far as like analytically of how things pan out, but also when I decided track order, I went based on storyline and based on
Hmm.
how, if I, because every time I play an album from anybody or an EP or anything, I always do top to finish. I will never shuffle because I think the order is really important. And Thought of You made the most sense to go first because I think that it described this, kind of whimsical relationship that I was talking about of, I like the idea of this person, and then you move to sober of, an incident of what happened, and it shows you what the relationship is. You move to just for show, you move to, wish I had friends and all that stuff. And it, it made sense, I think, chronologically too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think it's so important too. And I love that you said that, that whenever you listen to an album, order is important because, yeah, that's the way that the artist is trying to get you to comprehend like their thought process in the music. And I
Yeah.
think it's so special too that whenever you are creating not only the songs, but also thinking of the visual elements, you're being very thoughtful. And I don't know if it's intentional or not. Like, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but like, I feel like it's super intentional. Like, you're a visual performer and you're essentially building this world that it's like, okay, this is the moment that I'm in. I want you to kind of get into that frame of mind and into what I was thinking whenever I created this. Hence, all of the rollout that you did for this, the promotional rollout that you did so far, like, was that very intentional where you were like, okay, I am in the TV screen trying to break out. This is the thought process that I want you to go through while you listen to it. Was that very intentional on your end?
Yeah, it definitely was a big part of it. And, creating visuals and, that conceptual idea of posting, because like you said, I am a very visual artist and I love other visual artists that, do similar things. And I was like, I really want to do something. I knew I had the TV in mind, but I was like, I want
Mhm.
to do something that's cool and kind of metaphoric. And, we saw a bunch of things and I went back and forth, and that's when we ended up landing on. And it took a while to get everything situated, because I don't necessarily have a, I guess you could say, team behind me. Um, I have my family, and I have, my cousin who's very my creative director, and they're all very supportive. But as far as, big people where I can just call and say, hey, I need this, can that happen? It kind of doesn't exist for me right now. So to get everything together for those was a lot of work, but I'm happy that it got the way it did.
Yeah, and I think that's even more special because it's like it's your family that's helping you, but also because it's not this kind of machine of people that you're kind of going through checking all like the little boxes that people
Yeah,
want you to do. You have a more hands-on process with the things that you're creating and the things that that you're putting out into the world.
for sure.
It is all very incredibly curated and very well thought out, and that's obvious. I wonder if you're already now with the release, like you just released this, no pressure, but if you're already thinking, okay, well, this is the move that I want to do now. Like, did you learn anything from how you did your creative process? I mean, have you learned anything from now that you want to apply moving forward?
Yeah, definitely. The feedback is like the biggest thing that I take. I take every feedback that I get, like, so, like, purposely, and like so with a lot of intention behind it, because I think having, fans connect with me and say, oh, I like this song versus this song. And, I put polls on my Instagram, on my TikTok all the time of, people, I want to see what people like. And so I did not think that Corpse Bride was going to be a standout of this thing. I knew it was going to be
Yeah.
standout in the idea that it's a lot different. It's kind of
Hmm.
scary, but I didn't think people were going to take a liking to it. And Just for Show and Corpse Bride were the most different tracks, and those are the two that people like the most. So going forward, I've, written some more songs that I will be recording hopefully soon. Some of those are ballads, some of those are that, kind of electric sounding. So yeah, I've definitely taken everybody's feedback into consideration.
Yeah. So I know you said Corpse Bride was the most fun to produce and kind of create. What's for you? It can be your song, it can be another artist's song, but for you, what's the your favorite song to sing? Like, which song do you think it's like, oh, I can really express my range?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think out of the EP, I'm going to say Wish I Had Friends. Wish I Had
Hmm.
Friends is a song that I hold very, very dear to my heart. It's my favorite song off the EP. It was the fastest for me to write. And I love that song wholeheartedly. Um, and recording was just fun. I think my voice does not have a huge range, but gets better with time, gets better with age. And I think that that song sits pretty well. So
Hmm.
I love that song.
And I think it comes, especially like the layout of the EP, I feel like it comes in such a good way because it's like, okay, you just thought from Just for Show. Now you're going into Wish I Had Friends, which incredibly relatable lyrics. I think that's really special when you can be like, okay, like I feel that and I feel it deeply
Yeah.
within me. And then I think it just like it comes, it's right in the middle. of the EP as well. And I think it just comes at such a good time. And then it gets followed up by Revenge, which is super like angry and like it's like that switch up that like we were talking about earlier that you really need and creating that whole story. I think that's super special as well. Um,
Thank you.
yeah, of course. So, with everything that we just said and with the release of the EP, in your brain, whenever you're preparing for this release, because you said it was supposed to come out in April, but then it took you
Yeah.
3 weeks to do everything together, are you kind of like thinking, okay, well, I never want that to happen again? Or was it like a really good experience and like it was like an exercise of like, okay, let's see how fast we can get this going. Let's see how well we can collaborate to create this piece
Yeah.
of work.
It was definitely cool. It was definitely a different challenge of timing myself and seeing, because being creative all the time is difficult for anybody,
Mhm.
whether you're an artist, you do music, you paint, you're a TikToker, like being creative all the time is very difficult.
Yeah, that burnout
So,
is real.
yeah, and being able to do all this was super cool, and being able to have this opportunity was awesome, and it not coming out in April was interesting. I had the EP ready to go to come out in April. It was switched because my management was like, "Well, I think you could wait a little longer. I think you could prolong it." And I was like, "Okay." And I was a little worried at first, but I'm happy that I did it. It gave us more time. It gave us more, content to create. So it was definitely a fun experience.
Yeah, and then like you said, the creativity is kind of it comes in waves. It hits you when it wants to, and then it's like you can write a song in 20 minutes, or it's like that block that you had, and it's like it's gonna take me forever. Like I'm sorry, I can't help it, but it's just kind of like
Yeah.
how it goes. Um, what is your like bucket list? This is something that like I want to do for my next song, or like, do you have something like that?
A bucket list sounds really odd, but it's kind of I don't want to speak for every artist, but it's kind of like a lot of small artists kind of like peak moment for a song is to be placed in a Spotify playlist. It's very random,
Mm.
but Spotify is very, very selective of, the songs that come out, and they are listened to by real people. So, it's all, I guess you could kind of say, subjective, and, you know, you release music on Friday, the dates, the timing is very important. And, you're competing with, Taylor Swift, you're competing with Megan Thee Stallion, you're competing with all these really big artists, and chances of you falling on these playlists get slimmer and slimmer. I want personally, to be on a Spotify playlist, not even because it grows my listeners, but because I think that, it's nice to have it on such a bigger scale, and it's nice to see something that I did and,
Yeah.
that's public, and it's huge that people can relate to, and being able to see that, a curator at Spotify said, "Oh, I like this, and this is cool," and doing that with TikTok and posting all those TikToks and stuff like that is a big part of trying to generate hype and promotion for that, and you know, so I guess in a small scale,
Yeah.
that's probably it for
And
the
I feel
next
like
year.
it, especially like 2020, TikTok blew up for sure. And
Yeah,
then it kind of became there was a switch in the music industry with how people promote and release music. TikTok's a huge deal, especially now. Like people are just like adding little snippets, any way that they can get their music out into the world. Like it's super, super important. Do you sometimes feel pressure using social media for music growth? Like, are you thinking of yourself, okay, this is me as a person, and then this is me as an artist. How am I going to
yeah,
blend the two together?
yeah. It's I love that question. It's very stressful, and it's very, I don't know, it targets a specific part creatively, because for me, I'm not that good at posting on social media. Just even as a person, I'm not that great about it. And I never posted on TikTok. I posted on TikTok literally maybe once a year. And my management was like, "We gotta get you on TikTok." And I was like, "I know, but it's gonna be so hard. It's gonna be hard for me." And just trying to, adapt. And I think, especially with artists on TikTok, it's a very fine line between promotion and yelling at everybody to like I don't know, listen and
Yes.
listen and listen, and trying to find a good balance of trying to find a good mix, and trying to follow trends, following posting times, posting days, algorithms, tricks, and all that stuff is really important. So it's very like a deep concept, but it definitely is interesting how it's completely like changed the music
Yeah.
industry. It's very, very weird.
And I feel like especially just like beginning is just a lot of trial and error. Like you're just throwing out content, seeing what
Yeah,
sticks, and then going for that. And I love that
yeah,
you're very engaged with your audience now because I have seen like the polls that you do on your stories and stuff, and people love that. Like they want to feel involved in the process and they want to see the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. And you're in such a unique position where you're able to cultivate that community now. And then those are going to be the people that stick by you whenever you blow up too. Like that's really, really special. Yeah. But okay, so I know we're
yeah.
running out of
Thank
time here, and I just wanted to thank you for sitting in your car, listening to me, sitting through
thank
traffic so we could have
thank
this
you.
conversation. I know I
This
told
was
you that I was going to ask you this earlier, but
yeah.
top three songs of the summer, your playlist, what do you think?
Okay. Okay. I wrote these down. I wrote a couple down because I was like, I'm gonna forget. Right
Yeah.
now, we talked about Taylor Swift, so I like have to bring it up. Wonderland by Taylor Swift from 1989.
hmm
I never listened to 1989 like all the way through a lot. It's Speak Now is my top album, so I love Speak Now.
I know, me too.
I'm a Speak Now girly, but Wonderland, I love it. I absolutely love it. It's consistently on repeat. Um, what else? Crush Culture by Conan Gray. It's an older one,
Mm.
but I was very, very lucky to get to see Conan in concert, and he is so talented. He's so amazing. He's consistently playing in my car somewhere. I love Conan.
Incredible lyricist too.
Yes,
Really
I
good.
learned so much from him, and his work, and I studied so much of him, and I love him.
hmm
He's great. Probably Far by SZA. I was also very, very lucky to get to
Mm.
see SZA in concert, and she is a beautiful, amazing artist. She's so crazy with how hard she works, and just the production they put together for this tour was amazing. And
She's
um
so hardworking, it's crazy.
she like yeah, as far as I can see on social media, like it does not look like she stops at any point of
Oh
the day,
no.
which
Mm-mm.
is crazy. And she's spectacular, and yeah, SOS is a great album, so
It
I'm
is a
so happy.
really good album. Definitely at top of the charts in my book for sure. But
Sure.
thank you so much for meeting with me and talking with me. It was such a good conversation. I love the EP. Like I said, Corpse Bride is now one of my top songs on that EP. But
Thank
oh my gosh, it's just incredible to see what you're doing now and seeing just knowing that like it's gonna go like it's gonna be incredible. And I'm so excited to hear what you have next. Um,
thank
but thank you so much for everything.
Thank you. This was such a fun interview. I very rarely get to go like in depth of things. So I really appreciate all the questions that you asked. And if you ever want another interview, you ever want more in-depth stuff on songs, like please let me know. I'm
Of
more than happy.
course. Yes. And I'm gonna hit you up whenever Speak Now TV
Yes,
comes out
yes,
because I'm so
please do.
excited.
I'm so excited. Oh, please do.
It's gonna be so great. Well, I'll let you go. Thank you so much, and we'll
Thank
talk
you
super
so
soon.
much. Absolutely. Thank you.